Dear learner, I hope you enjoyed the first part of Train Your Brain. For acting like a researcher, one should have practice Train Your Brain. So in the first part of Train Your Brain, we discussed about how to understand the unit of analysis and how to get clarity on concept, construct and variables. Connecting with the previous session, the second part of Train Your Brain is on variables. Variables are the operationalization of the concept or construct. If you remember the previous session, we discussed about three terms: concepts and constructs, right? And these two things were connected with the theoretical underpinning. So this theoretical underpinning is nothing but theory. That means literature. When this literature has been studied and you wanted to operationalize the concept and constructs, right? Basically the construct which are in the model, your study model, right? Suppose you have chosen few concepts into your model, that means the selected concepts are the construct for you, and those constructs, when you are going to connect with the field, that means you need to operationalize the constructs, and that is variable. Variables are basically meant for measuring the construct, right? That means now you are ready to measure the construct from the ground or from the empirical world. Now what are the different types of variable? So one should require to understand or to train the brain to understand the different types of variables. Once you have an understanding about the type of variables, it is very easy to conceptualize and to work on the operationalization of the models or frameworks. Now the first variable is dependent variable. Dependent variable is nothing but an outcome variable. It's an outcome variable. Outcome variable, or we can also say predicted variable. We can also use to say endogenous variables, right? So these are the different names connected with the dependent variable. Similarly, independent variables means predictor variable, which is going to predict the outcome variable, right? Mediating variable, these variables are also known as intervening, because they intervene in a particular relationship, right? Similarly, there is a fourth number of variable, which is moderating variables, which influence the existing relationship between dependent and independent variable. So what it does, independent variable and dependent variables, the relationship is getting influenced by the moderating variable. And similarly, the controlled variable or extraneous variable, which is again one of the very crucial component, because this variable has to be sometime kept constant, so that these variables, because of having capability to impact the model, right? So we keep them constant and we say them as a control variable, right? Now let's discuss one by one these different variables. Now first we can discuss independent and dependent together. Now see what is independent and what is dependent variable. Dependent variable. Now independent variable are nothing but a cause, right? These are the cause, means these are the predictors. Dependent variables are the effect. Therefore, they are also known as effect variables or outcome variables or predicted variables, right? Now let's discuss empirically how we can connect with these two variables. or how these variables look like when it comes to modeling, right? Now coming to the modeling part, how to model independent variables and dependent variables are in any model can be denoted like this. dv stands for dependent variable, id stands for independent variable, right? Because dv is a outcome variable, so the point of the arrow is towards dv, right? So the tail of the arrow is towards iv. So this is the predictor, iv is a predictor, dv is a predicate. So that means iv is a cause, dv is a effect. Iv is a cause, dv direct dependent variable is outcome variable, right? So in models, if you see such kind of relationship, I mean the arrow pointing towards one variable, so the variable which is having a point of arrow, right, or head of the arrow, you will see that's a outcome variable. It is also known as endogenous variable. As I told you, endogenous. So endogenous variable means the entire model. So that means suppose this is a model, right? So this is a model. So model is basically measuring what? Endogenous. So the model is measuring the endogenous variable, the variable which is being measured with the help of model, right? So this model is meant to measure the dependent variable. An independent variable, this is not being measured, right? This is a manipulator, right? As and when you can change this iv, your value of the dependent variable will be changed. So this is outside of the model. I mean the measure of this iv is outside of the model, right? And the measure of endogenous is inside the model. Therefore we are saying endogenous. Endo means inside, exo means this is exogenous variable. Exo means outside of the model, right? So independent variables are those variables whose measure is outside of the model, right? So these can be decided outside the model, but they are impacting your model. Therefore dv, which is outcome variable, we are saying dv as a endogenous variable. Now see the second one, mediating and moderating variables. Mediating or moderating variable, what is the difference? Mediating variables are also known as intervening variables. So these variables basically intervene. Now how they can intervene? They can intervene how they can intervene. So they can address the question of how. Basically they work on process. Now let's take an example, right? Take an example. Suppose attitude of a person towards buying a product is connected with the purchase intention or purchase behavior of the product, right? So in that case, what is the outcome variable? pi is a outcome variable. It is independent variable. So it is independent variable. Pi is outcome or dependent variable. Please try to understand, this pi is nothing but outcome variable. So this model is basically examine the pi as a endogenous. So this is also endogenous. This model is trying to measure pi, right, with the help of independent variable. Suppose we wanted to understand that because of health consciousness as an intervening variable, health consciousness as an intervening model, this purchase intention is now increasing, right? Suppose we have already given a statement that AT is responsible for, or AT is responsible for impact on purchase intention, right? At the same time, if we are also proposing a statement or a claim that high health consciousness of an individual is increasing this relationship, right? That means instead of directly connecting AT with PI, AT is improving health consciousness, attitude is converting the health consciousness, and as a result the purchase intention is increasing. That means we are talking about how this process of AT and PI relationship is improving. So we are saying that with the intervening of variable or mediating variable, the existing relationship is increased, right? So here SC is a mediating variable or intervening mediator, and this is the structural diagram that AT is improving the HC. As a result, HC is improving PI. So instead of direct relationship between AT and PI, we can say yes, AT and PI is having a direct relationship, but when it comes to an intermediating variable, health consciousness, this process is giving much better result. Is it clear? Now moving to the moderating variables. Now as mediating variable we're talking about how process, the moderating variable are talking about when of the process, right? So what it means, very simple, moderating variables are telling us the influence of variable. Suppose in the same example, when we have taken the independent variable as attitude or exogenous variable attitude and purchase intention as endogenous or independent variable, right? In the same relationship, if we say health consciousness as influencing this relationship without intervening, now there is no intervention, there is no intervening effect of SC. Instead of that, we are saying the relationship is same, right? AT impact PI, same relationship, but we are claiming, or we are putting our claim that health consciousness as a moderating variable when it present in this relationship, when moderating variables present, so the relationship of AT and PI either will strengthen or weaken. That means this strengthen and weaken are the influence due to moderator or moderating variable, right? In that case, the structural model, right, model and the arrow is not into pointing or tailing towards any particular concept, but it is pointing to the existing relationship, right? There is no connection between AT and SC, there is no connection with HC and PI, but the moderating variable is influencing the relationship which is already exist. Either in the presence of SC this relationship will strengthen, or in the presence of SC this relationship will weaken. And that is to be, if that is the purpose of the study, right, that is known as moderating effect. And this process is moderating effect process, and that is how we have to create our structural model, right? Now talking about the extraneous variables or confounding variables. What about the extraneous variables and what about the confounding variables? So extraneous variables are generally the variables which are not being, these are extraneous variables are any variables which are not being investigated, that has the potential to affect the outcome of the study. I mean, these are the type of variables which is having the potential to change the outcome of the study, but generally they are not being investigated, right? So the special cases, all the demographics, and these extraneous variables are also known as control variables, and these are held constant during the investigation, right? So these variables are held constant during the, say for example, demographics, age, gender, income, education, occupation, right? So these are some of the variables which can be kept or hold constant. Of course they are having certain potential, but they are not being investigated, right? Now the confounding variables are nothing but these are confounding variables are types of extraneous variable, extraneous variables, right? These are the extraneous variables which can be taken into consideration during investigation. If we found that there is a potential of some extraneous variables, right, and we wanted to check the effect of some extraneous variables, say for example gender, whether male buy more or female buy more, right? So in that case, if we take this into the consideration, gender into the investigation, so the same extraneous variables can become confounding variables. I hope it is clear to you. So thank you very much.